now time to turn it over to Colonel Ed Shames to give you guys what I know will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, hearing his experiences during the war. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you. Hey, enough of that stuff, please. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Thank you very much. Wait, you may not take, you want to take a lot of that back later. Just slow down a little bit. Okay, thank you. If I can still see, by the time we finish today, I'll finish my talk at the light. If it appears that I'm a bit shaken and out of sorts in front of you this evening, please understand that I really am. Never in my wildest imagination would I have ever believed I would be here telling you what no human should have witnessed over 67 years ago. Maybe it's about time. I'm not really so smart that I know. I will tell you this. What I did witness back then is something that I have pondered over just about every night of my life for 67 years before I've been able to get to sleep. Please understand that I want no one to pity me, as I'm a very strong person, as you will see when we get into my talk here tonight. You may have thought so if you saw me look at that rail car today. But what the world allowed to happen back during the 30s and 40s of our last century, well, there are no words that I know of to describe it. Nothing. While I'm thinking selfishly about myself, it boggles my mind and wonder how the survivors of those horrors can go about their lives. I shall talk about them in just a while. Allow me to explain how I am here with all of you this evening. About 2 months ago, a young lady who is with us tonight called me on the phone and asked if it was so that she had heard I was one of the first American officers at a German concentration camp called Dachau. How she got the information, I have no idea whatsoever. This lady who lives and works in this area is also of a family who are from Wisconsin area that volunteers to set up reunions for the Band of Brothers each year at different locations throughout the country, without pay, I may add. Her sister, mother, father, all of them. The mother's here with this lady tonight, and they've been accompanying me throughout my stay here. And thank you very much, both of you. And while I'm talking about people here, I want to thank my grandson for coming out. He came here this afternoon or this morning, and he's going to leave tomorrow morning just to hear me talk. And I thank you. He is I call him a nutcracker because he's a counselor for, problems. And his cousin is with him, a very famous doctor from the West Coast, my nephew, Richard Shames. Thank you, Richard, for coming. You're a great guy. I'd always refused to talk about my experience at both Landsberg and Dachau. Would never discuss it with anyone, including my own family. Have been asked many times, would never even consider it. Too many bitter memories. I also refused Beth Archer the night she called. I usually check my email nightly and call it what you wish, but after speaking with Beth that night, one of the pop-ups on my computer had a news bulletin about a Republican candidate by the name of Arthur Jones was to run for Congress representing his district in Illinois. It also stated in the article he was the head of the KKK in his area, a Holocaust denier, a contemptuous anti-Semite, and he celebrates Hitler's birthday each year. Just a nice, misunderstood gentleman. For some reason, I called back to Beth the next day and said, "How can I help?" So here I am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you all. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I wondered who in the hell he was talking about. I'm absolutely delighted to be in your beautiful community tonight. As a matter of fact, at my age, I'm delighted to be anywhere and know where I am. Thank you again for having me. First, let me say to you that all the propaganda you read and heard about me may not exactly tell you who I am. The first thing I say, I am not a hero. I was a determined soldier that did his job as I was trained to perform. I joined as a private in the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment as a volunteer to serve in an experimental unit in the United States Army. Its history as the finest Army regiment ever conceived is quite a fascinating story in itself. These series of events that I will describe are the facts of how the 506 was trained to help a war, and in the process of winning that war, accidentally came across the Landsberg concentration camp. I will also explain how I was selected to be the soldier to travel to an unknown that I found out later to be the most infamous Dachau during the month of April 1945. Notice I said during the month of April. My mind and brain was so twisted, the moment I saw what I came upon, I have no idea of the exact date. Nor have I ever wanted to remember. All I know is that it was the end of April and the beginning of May 1945, and that the war in Europe was quickly coming to an end. As the old saying goes, let's start at the beginning. And the beginning here is this. When I first started writing my thing here to give you tonight, I drafted about 7 copies of different things. I mean long and hard copies that I stayed up till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to compose. I tore 6 of them up because I decided that's really not what I wanted to say, to tell you. At the beginning of the phase of my life, September 1942, I stepped into the war with both feet, literally and actually. September and August 1942. Strange things seemed to happen during wartime. Here I was about to be sworn in with 2 others as a cadet fighting pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force at Hamilton, Ontario, on December the 8th, 1941. We were in our hotel room in Canada listening to the radio when a bulletin came in about Pearl Harbor. The date, of course, was December the 7th, 1941. From there, let's talk about the 506 Parachute Infantry. We go back to April 1942. What a grim time this was for our beloved country. You're getting a history lesson now. Pearl Harbor was just a few months ago with over 3,500 casualties, 2,500 dead, and at least 1,000 wounded, both civilian and military. The military had a physical loss of all of our 8 battleships. 4 were actually sunk. 200 of our 300 planes were destroyed. And I noticed something just last night. I try to look around and grasp everything. And one of the brochures in my room here at the San Marcos said that were 5 battleships sunk, 8 destroyed, but we won't argue about which 5. I know that they recovered most all of them except the Arizona and another one. On December the 16th of the same year, Wake Island was captured out in the Pacific with 1,616 of our troops taken prisoner. On April the 4th, we suffered the fall of Bataan, and to make things really grim, came the surrender of Corregidor. As many as 50 to 60,000 of our troops were taken prisoner. And I repeat, as many as 50 to 60,000 of our troops were taken prisoner. 40 to 50,000 were Filipino nationals, and 10,000 at least were Americans, Army, Navy, Marines, men and women. And then came the Bataan Death March, which was one of our saddest episodes of our history. The folks at General Headquarters of the United States Army decided it was time to really do something spectacular. I didn't say the Pentagon because at that time the War Department had not yet occupied the Pentagon. It was built but not occupied. It was just completed. The War Department was the United States Army. All of this planning was at Fort Monroe, Virginia, at Army Headquarters, GHQ, General Headquarters. These folks were civilians of the War Department, not military officers. They had devised a plan for a super force to form in the form of an Army military regiment, a parachute unit, which at that time was brand new things, that they would recruit directly from civilian life. These folks had devised a plan for a super force in the form of an Army military unit, a parachute unit, that they would recruit directly from civilian life. Senior officers were at that choosing would be the only military, regular military used, and of course the cadre. Cadre means the mentors and teachers, all enlisted, regular Army people, hand-picked. They wanted some new ideas and thoughts about how to train and equip such a new force. The strict physical requirements would had to be so that they thought that the very few could make the cut. They planned it that way. The IQ test that they would give in order to enter this unit would be on the basis that those eligible would be fit for officers' training when the time came. Truly, they wanted to devise something that the American public would take notice of and be proud of our armed forces again. America was in a deep funk. The regular Army officer said, "You people have lost your minds." And then, of course, the old saw, "You can't take men out of civilian life and in 16 weeks turn them into real soldiers. It's never been done before." You've heard that before. The civilians prevailed, the propaganda went out, and idiots like me swallowed the bait, and instead of the 2,500 expected to be recruited, 7,000 became qualified to join the unit that offered glamour, etc., with the beautiful parachute boots and the gals hanging from each arm, as depicted by the brochures presented from the Army. I'm not kidding a bit. In fact, those brochures are now worth a lot of money on eBay, so keep your eyes open. Now, with the uniforms fighting the civilians as what to do next, the question was, where do we put these so-called supermen? Fort Bragg with thousands of acres that wasn't used at that time. Not even today, it's so vast. They said, not in my backyard. Fort Benning, home of the newly formed parachute school and training facility, said, we don't need another failure, not here. And so it went until someone came up with a place called Camp Toombs, Toombs, an old National Guard and CCC camp that was in the Army inventory of vacant lands, named after an 1850 senator from Georgia that preached secession as early as 1855. Naturally, they had to change the name to Camp Toombs, or not to Camp Decor, I'm sorry. The Army agreed that it was the correct place because when the plan went busted and they could hide the fact much better, very few people would have ever heard of the idea of super regiment and all the money spent, and they sure as hell hadn't heard of Toccoa, Georgia. You couldn't get there from here. We now had a home for the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment. Now, what do you do with 7,000 men in an Army unit that has a table of organization of 2,500? You, of course, skim the top to expose the finest. You first devise a physical that would give you standards unheard of at that time. The people were there, used the effort to get the best. That made sense. When we arrived at the Corps, the first thing was a physical given by full-blown MDs. You would have thought we were going in for brain surgery. About 15% of the entire command was lost due to the requirements of that physical. How I slipped through the cracks, I'll never know. Actually, truckloads left the camp from other posts and stations. Men would come in during the night from the train station, about a 15-minute ride, to the tents at the Corps. The next morning or afternoon, some would reverse themselves and be returned to the train station. This, of course, was after the physical. Almost all of us had no idea what was happening. We knew nothing about Army life and absolutely nothing about the crazy outfit we wished to be part of. Imagine, here we were about to be developed into super soldiers that would be jumping out of airplanes behind enemy lines, yet it was determined later during our training, 98% of our entire 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment had never even ridden in an airplane. Now that sounds a bit outlandish, but remember, these men came mostly, including me, from families that just endured one of the greatest depressions in our history. When buying gasoline at a cost of 5 gallons for $1, I repeat, 5 gallons for $1, was a strain on the budget. Chevrolet and Ford automobiles were being sold on big billboards throughout the country for $469. Who had money for airplane tickets? The steps I'm describing happened as units or companies were being formed at 506. The first one would be A Company, the next B Company, so forth until I Company was fully formed. I was assigned to I Company about the 2nd of September, 1942, my second day at Camp Decor.